a poor girl lended her umbrella to a stranger in the rain. And what happened next was truly life-changing. This isn't just a feel-good story. This is about how one moment of genuine compassion can trigger a chain reaction so powerful that it transforms lives, breaks down barriers, and rewrites the rules of an entire society. By the end, you'll understand why this umbrella became the most valuable object two women ever touched. Maya walked through the city every single day, but nobody ever saw her. She was the kind of person you'd pass on the street 1,000 times and never remember her face. 28 years old, wearing the same 3 outfits on rotation, working a job that paid just enough to keep her trapped, but never enough to let her breathe. She cleaned offices at night, the ones with the floor-to-ceiling windows and the view of the city skyline that she'd never afford to see from above. While executives slept in penthouses, Maya was on her hands and knees scrubbing their marble floors, erasing the traces of their success. Her apartment was a studio the size of a closet. The radiator clanked all winter. The landlord never fixed anything. She had $247 in her savings account, and that number hadn't changed in 6 months. Not because she wasn't trying. She was working 2 jobs, the cleaning gig at night, and during the day, she worked at a coffee shop where customers would snap their fingers at her like she was furniture. Another latte. Faster. Nobody knew her name. Nobody cared. But here's what nobody knew. Maya was about to lose everything. Her boss at the coffee shop, a man named Derek, who had the personality of wet cardboard, had been looking for an excuse to fire her for weeks. He wanted to replace her with someone younger, someone cheaper, someone who wouldn't ask for the raise she desperately needed. And last Tuesday, he found his excuse. A customer complained that their cappuccino was too hot. Derek didn't even ask her side of the story. He just said, "You're done. Last paycheck is Friday." One job gone. Just like that. Maya did the math in her head that night, lying in her bed, staring at the water stain on her ceiling that looked like a map of a country she'd never visit. Without that income, she had maybe 3 weeks before she couldn't pay rent, 3 weeks before she'd be on the street. And the cleaning job alone wasn't enough. It never was. She'd been treading water for so long that she'd forgotten what it felt like to actually swim. For Maya, the bigger problem wasn't just losing a job. It was that losing this job meant losing her apartment. Losing her apartment meant losing her address. Losing her address meant losing her ability to find another job. It was a spiral, a trap, a nightmare with no exit sign. She lay there in the dark, listening to the radiator clank, and for the first time in years, she let herself cry. Not quiet tears, real soul-crushing sobs. Because she could see it now. The end. Not death, but something almost worse. Invisibility becoming permanent. She'd disappear completely. The next morning, Maya woke up to the sound of rain hammering against her window. Not gentle rain, angry rain, the kind that floods streets and ruins days. She had to go to her cleaning job that night. She had no choice. She needed every single dollar. So she got dressed, put on her thin jacket that barely kept out the wind, and stepped outside into the downpour. That's when she saw it. Wedged between 2 trash cans in the alley behind her building was an old umbrella. It was weathered, faded red, with a wooden handle that was cracked and worn smooth by decades of hands. It should have been in the trash. It looked like it belonged there. But somehow it had survived. It was still standing, still functional. Maya picked it up like it was made of gold. She tested it. The mechanism worked. The fabric held. It wasn't pretty, but it was real. It was solid. It was hers, or at least nobody else wanted it. For the first time in weeks, Maya felt something shift inside her chest. Not hope exactly, but maybe the possibility of hope. This broken umbrella, this discarded thing, had been waiting for her in the rain, and she held it over her head as she walked to work. And for just a moment, she felt less invisible. She felt protected. She felt like maybe, just maybe, the universe wasn't completely against her. She had no idea that this umbrella would soon become the most important object in her life. But what Maya didn't know was that this umbrella would soon introduce her to a woman who had everything except the one thing that actually mattered. And that meeting would set off a chain reaction that neither of them could have predicted. Victoria Chen stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her penthouse apartment on the 42nd floor, looking down at the city below. From up here, everything looked small, manageable, clean. The people on the streets were just dots. The problems of the world were just background noise. She was 45 years old, and she had everything. Everything. A corner office at one of the most prestigious investment firms in the city. A net worth that most people couldn't even comprehend. 3 homes. A closet full of designer clothes she'd worn once. A schedule so packed with important meetings that she sometimes forgot to eat. A husband who barely spoke to her anymore. 2 adult children who called her twice a year, if that. Victoria had spent the last 20 years climbing, clawing her way up, making the right deals, knowing the right people, saying the right things in the right rooms. She'd sacrificed everything for this view, for this apartment, for this life that looked perfect from the outside. But here's what nobody knew. Victoria was suffocating, not physically. Physically, she had everything: air conditioning, a private chef, a personal trainer, a therapist she paid $400 an hour to tell her that her anxiety was probably just stress. But emotionally, spiritually, Victoria was hollow, empty. She'd won the game, but somewhere along the way, she'd forgotten why she was playing it in the first place. She had money, but she had no friends. Not real ones. Everyone around her wanted something: a favor, an introduction, an investment opportunity. She couldn't remember the last time someone had looked her in the eye and asked how she was actually feeling. Not, "How are you?" the polite question people ask, but really asked. Cared. Her marriage was a formality. Her husband, Robert, was a successful surgeon, and they lived in the same apartment like 2 strangers who happened to share the same address. They had dinner together twice a week, and they talked about their schedules and their investments and the weather. Never about anything that mattered. Never about what was breaking inside both of them. Her children had learned from her example. Success means distance. Her daughter was a lawyer in Boston. Her son was in finance in London. They were both climbing their own mountains just like she had taught them. And Victoria was so proud of them, and so completely alone. That morning, Victoria had closed a deal worth $47 million. It was a win, a big one. Her boss had congratulated her. Her team had applauded. She'd gone back to her office, closed the door, and sat in the dark for 20 minutes, feeling absolutely nothing. She was supposed to feel something. She was supposed to feel victorious, accomplished, alive. Instead, she felt dead. So she'd left work early, something she never did, and came home to her penthouse. She stood at the window, looking out at the city, and she realized something terrifying. She didn't know how to be happy anymore. She didn't know if she'd ever known. Maybe she'd been chasing the wrong thing her entire life. Maybe all of this, the money, the status, the view, was just an elaborate distraction from the fact that she was completely, utterly alone. The rain started around noon. Heavy rain. The kind that made the city look like it was crying. Victoria watched it fall, and she thought about calling someone. But who? Who would she call? Her husband was in surgery until late. Her assistant would interpret a personal call as weakness. Her therapist was booked. Her mother had passed away 5 years ago, and they'd never really talked anyway. She was alone in a penthouse with 42 floors between her and everyone else in the world. She decided to go out. Just for a walk, just to feel something. Anything. She grabbed her coat, a designer piece that cost more than most people's monthly rent, and realized she didn't have an umbrella. Not a single one. How was that possible? She had everything, but she didn't have an umbrella. She didn't care. She went out into the rain anyway. The rain was relentless. It hammered down on the sidewalks, turning the streets into rivers of gray water. Victoria walked without direction, letting her feet carry her through neighborhoods she'd never visited before. She'd spent so much of her life in climate-controlled cars and buildings that she'd almost forgotten what rain felt like. It was cold. It was wet. It was real. She didn't care that her designer coat was getting soaked. She didn't care that her expensive shoes were ruined. For the first time in years, she felt something other than numbness. The rain was washing away the carefully constructed version of herself that she presented to the world. Out here, alone, she was just a woman getting drenched. She turned a corner and found herself in a part of the city she'd never been to before. Narrow streets, old buildings, the kind of neighborhood that didn't appear in the real estate listings she occasionally browsed. There was a small coffee shop with steamed-up windows, and through the glass, she could see people sitting at tables, talking, laughing. Real laughter, the kind that came from somewhere deep inside. Victoria stood outside in the rain, watching them through the window like she was watching a movie of a life she'd never have. That's when she felt it. A hand on her shoulder, gentle, tentative. You're going to catch pneumonia standing out here. Victoria turned around, and that's when she saw her. Maya was standing there, soaking wet, holding that old red umbrella. She was small, maybe 5'3", with dark hair plastered to her face. She was wearing a thin jacket that was clearly falling apart. Her shoes were held together with duct tape. Everything about her screamed poverty, struggle, survival. But her eyes were the most alive thing Victoria had seen in years. "I'm fine," Victoria said, which was the most automatic response, the one she always gave, the lie she always told. "You don't look fine," Maya said simply. "You look like you're drowning, and it's not the rain." Victoria should have walked away. She should have gone back to her penthouse, taken a hot shower, and forgotten this encounter ever happened. That's what the old Victoria would have done. That's what the version of her that made $47 million deals would have done. But something in Maya's directness, the complete absence of pretense, made her stop. "Come on," Maya said, tilting the umbrella toward Victoria. "Let's get you inside before you turn into an icicle." They walked into the coffee shop together, this woman in a 3,000 coat, and this woman in a 3,000 coat, and this woman in a 3,000 coat, and this woman in a 50 jacket. They must have looked ridiculous. They probably did. But nobody seemed to notice or care. They sat at a small table in the corner, and Maya ordered 2 hot chocolates without asking what Victoria wanted. It was such a small thing, such a simple gesture. But it broke something open inside Victoria. Nobody had ordered for her in years. Nobody had made a decision for her without consulting a spreadsheet or a 5-year plan. "I'm Maya," she said, wrapping her hands around the mug. "Victoria." "So, Victoria, What's your story? And don't tell me you're fine. I can see you're not fine. And something about the way Maya asked, not with pity, not with judgment, just with genuine curiosity, made Victoria tell the truth. She told this stranger about her empty marriage, her distant children, her hollow victories. She told her about the $47 million deal that meant nothing. She told her about standing in a penthouse with everything and feeling like she had nothing. Maya listened. She didn't offer advice. She didn't try to fix it. She just listened. When Victoria finished, there was silence for a long moment. You know what I realized? Maya said. I've been invisible my whole life. Nobody sees me. Nobody cares. And I thought that was the worst thing that could happen to a person. But listening to you, I think maybe being seen and not loved is worse. You're visible, and everyone wants something from you. But nobody wants you. Victoria felt tears in her eyes. It was the most honest thing anyone had said to her in decades. What do you do? Victoria asked. I mean, for work? Maya hesitated. And in that hesitation, Victoria understood that Maya was ashamed, that she was about to lie or minimize or apologize for her life. I clean offices at night, Maya said finally. And I used to work at a coffee shop, but I got fired yesterday. Why? Because I'm invisible, Maya said with a bitter laugh. Because it's easy to get rid of someone nobody notices. Victoria looked at this woman. This brave, honest, broken woman, and she made a decision that would have horrified the old Victoria. The one who calculated every move, the one who never acted on impulse. What if you weren't invisible? Victoria asked. What do you mean? I mean, what if I helped you? What if we helped each other? Maya laughed. You don't even know me. I know enough, Victoria said. I know you stopped in the rain to help a stranger. I know you're honest. I know you're real. That's more than I can say about anyone else in my life. They talked for 3 hours. They talked about their lives, their fears, their dreams. Victoria told Maya about the daughter she barely knew, the son she'd pushed into a career he didn't want. Maya told Victoria about her mother, who died when she was 16, and how she'd been trying to survive ever since. By the time they left the coffee shop, something had shifted. They weren't just two strangers anymore. They were two people who'd seen each other, really seen each other. And in that seeing, they'd found something they didn't even know they were looking for. Thank you, Victoria said as they stood on the sidewalk. For what? For lending me your umbrella, for stopping, for being real. Maya smiled. Thank you for listening, for seeing me. They exchanged numbers, and Victoria went back to her penthouse. But she was different now. She'd been touched by something real, and she couldn't unknow it. The umbrella sat in her car. She'd forgotten to give it back. She told herself she'd return it tomorrow. But deep down, she knew that umbrella was going to change everything. Victoria didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed next to her husband, who was already asleep, as always, and stared at the ceiling, pondering the events of the day. The rhythmic sound of his breathing was a stark contrast to the chaos inside her mind. Thoughts of Maya swirled around, refusing to dissipate. The coffee shop, the rain, the honesty, they all replayed in her head like a looping film reel. It was a night filled with restless tossing and turning. She thought about how, for the first time in years, she had shared her truth with someone who didn't want anything from her. Maya's vibrant spirit stood out against the backdrop of her own muted life. The contrast was jarring. It was as if someone had turned the lights on in a dark room. Victoria had spent decades building her empire, climbing the corporate ladder, amassing wealth and status. But she realized she had built it on a fragile foundation of isolation. She had everything, and yet felt so utterly alone. The thought was suffocating. By 3 a.m., Victoria had made a decision. She swung her legs off the bed and padded quietly to her home office, where the glow of her laptop screen illuminated her face in the dark. She pulled up her company's personnel files, her fingers flying over the keyboard as she searched for every detail she could find about Maya. She knew she had connections, resources, and the means to change a life. What she needed now was a plan. The idea of hiring Maya was both exhilarating and terrifying. It felt reckless, something she hadn't done in ages. But something about Maya, their connection, the raw honesty, spurred her forward. She wasn't just looking to give Maya a job. She was looking to reclaim her own humanity in the process. The next morning, she called Maya. "Hi," Maya answered, her voice cautious and tinged with disbelief. "I wasn't sure you'd actually call." "I wasn't sure I would either," Victoria admitted, the words tumbling out. "But I did, and I have a proposition for you." "What kind of proposition?" "Meet me for lunch. There's a restaurant near my office. 12 o'clock. There was a pause, a pregnant silence that stretched between them as Maya processed the invitation. Victoria could almost hear her internal debate, the hesitation that came with stepping into the unknown. But finally, Maya answered, "Okay, I'll be there." The restaurant was upscale, the kind of place where the waiters wore crisp white shirts and the menus had no prices listed. Victoria had reserved a private corner table, wanting to keep their conversation away from prying eyes. When Maya arrived, she looked different. She was wearing the same thin jacket, the same worn shoes, but she had made an effort. Her hair was dried and brushed back, and she wore the only nice thing she owned. A black dress that clung to her frame, a bit frayed at the seams, but beautiful nonetheless. As Victoria stood to greet her, she felt an overwhelming surge of warmth. Without thinking about it, she hugged Maya. It was a small gesture, but it made Maya's eyes shimmer with unshed tears. They sat down, and Victoria didn't waste time with small talk. She dove right into the heart of her proposal. "I want to hire you," Victoria said, her voice firm and resolute. "For what? I don't have any skills. I clean offices. I made coffee." Maya replied, her brows furrowing in confusion. "I know," Victoria said, leaning forward. "But that's not what I'm hiring you for. I'm hiring you to be my assistant, my real assistant, not the one who schedules my meetings and manages my calendar. I want you to help me figure out who I actually am when I'm not performing for everyone else." Maya stared at her, disbelief etched on her face. "That's insane." "I know," Victoria said, her heart racing. "But I need someone who will hold me accountable, someone who will remind me of what really matters. I've spent so long in this corporate machine that I've forgotten how to be human. You, Maya, you have nothing, and yet you still stopped in the rain to help a stranger. You have more heart than I do." This time, it was Maya who hesitated. "Why are you doing this?" Victoria took a deep breath, the weight of her confession heavy on her chest. "Because yesterday, for the first time in 20 years, I felt like a human being instead of a machine. And I realized that I've built this entire life based on a lie. I thought if I had enough money, enough status, enough things, I'd be happy. But I'm not. I'm miserable. And you showed me that there's still something real left in this world." Maya's hands trembled, and she put her fork down. "You're serious?" Completely. What does your husband think about this? Victoria smiled sadly, the corners of her mouth turning down. My husband won't even notice you exist. Maya's eyes widened, and Victoria could see the wheels turning in her mind. They talked through lunch, Victoria laying out the details. She offered a salary that would be 3 times what Maya made cleaning offices, complete with benefits. A real job with real responsibilities. And in exchange, Victoria wanted honesty. She wanted someone who wouldn't let her slip back into her old patterns, someone who would challenge her to face the truth of her life. By the end of lunch, Maya had agreed, though her voice was filled with uncertainty. When do I start? Tomorrow, Victoria said, a smile spreading across her face. And the first thing we're going to do is go shopping. You need clothes. Real clothes. Not because I'm trying to change you, but because you deserve to feel comfortable in your own skin. As they left the restaurant, Victoria felt a flutter of excitement in her chest. It was a new beginning for both of them. 2 women from different worlds, forging an unexpected partnership. But the reality of her own life still loomed large. She would have to face her husband and the truth of their marriage, which felt increasingly like a ghost, haunting her every move. That night, Victoria returned home and told Robert that she had hired a new assistant. That's nice, he said, barely looking up from his phone. What's her background? She's real, Victoria replied, her voice firm. What does that mean? It means she's the most real person I've met in years, Victoria said, her frustration bubbling to the surface. Robert shrugged, his attention still on his screen. He didn't ask any follow-up questions. He didn't care. And in that moment of apathy, Victoria felt the weight of her reality settle heavily on her shoulders. Her marriage was a performance, a series of polite exchanges with a man who had become a stranger. She was finally admitting it to herself. The next morning, Maya showed up at Victoria's office building at 8 a.m., looking nervous but determined. Victoria could see the tension in her shoulders, the uncertainty in her eyes. It mirrored her own feelings about stepping into this new phase of her life. Ready? Victoria asked, offering a reassuring smile. No, Maya said, her voice shaking slightly. But let's do it anyway. As they walked into the building together, Victoria felt a rush of adrenaline. The elevator doors slid shut, and she caught their reflection in the polished metal. A woman in a $10,000 suit and a woman in a borrowed dress. 2 broken people trying to fix each other, trying to navigate a world that often felt unforgiving. In the office, the day unfolded like a whirlwind. Colleagues exchanged curious glances, whispers trailing behind them as they passed. Victoria could sense the judgment, the confusion, but she didn't care. She was stepping into her truth, and that was all that mattered. She introduced Maya to her team, emphasizing her role and the unique dynamic they would share. As the day progressed, Maya found her footing. She started organizing Victoria's chaotic schedule, filtering through emails and voicemails that had piled up over the years. For the first time, Victoria felt someone truly supporting her, not just managing her. Maya's energy was infectious, and slowly, the office atmosphere seemed to shift. Colleagues began to engage with Maya, asking her opinions, including her in conversations that once felt exclusive to Victoria. During lunch, as they sat together in the bustling cafeteria, Maya leaned forward. So, what's the plan for our shopping trip? Victoria smiled, feeling a sense of camaraderie. We'll start with the basics. You need clothes that fit you and make you feel good. No more duct tape and worn-out shoes. I want you to walk into a room and own it. Maya chuckled, a lightness in her demeanor. I've never really thought about clothes like that. I just wear what's practical. Practical is good, Victoria said. But feeling good is even better. You deserve to feel confident, to feel like you can walk into any room and have a seat at the table. As they finished their lunches, Victoria felt a warmth spreading through her chest. This was more than just a job for Maya. It was a chance to redefine who they both were. They were no longer just women defined by their circumstances. They were women who would help each other rise above those circumstances. After work, Victoria and Maya went shopping. They explored boutique after boutique, sifting through racks of clothes. Victoria watched as Maya tried on outfits, her face lighting up with each new look. It was as if she was shedding layers of her past, embracing a new identity with each piece of clothing. "This one," Maya exclaimed, twirling in a stunning emerald dress that hugged her curves perfectly. "I feel different, better." "You look amazing," Victoria said, her heart swelling with pride. This is just the beginning. That night, as Victoria lay in bed, she felt a sense of hope blooming inside her. She had taken a risk, and it was paying off in ways she hadn't anticipated. She was no longer alone in her penthouse, and for the first time in years, she felt like she was on a path to something real. As she drifted into a fitful sleep, Victoria dreamed of a future where she and Maya could redefine what success meant. Not just in terms of wealth and status, but in terms of connection, authenticity, and true happiness. The journey ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, she felt ready to embrace it. The first week with Maya at the office was transformative in ways Victoria hadn't anticipated. Maya had a way of cutting through the corporate noise, asking simple questions that exposed the absurdity of endless meetings and meaningless metrics. She would sit in Victoria's office, observing the parade of executives and consultants. And afterward, she'd ask things like, "Why did that man spend 45 minutes talking about something that could have been an email?" Victoria found herself laughing, actually laughing, for the first time in years. It was a sound that felt foreign in her own mouth, like she was relearning how to be human. Each day, as Maya navigated the complexities of the corporate landscape with a fresh perspective, Victoria felt the weight of her own expectations lifting. But not everyone was pleased with this new dynamic. On Friday afternoon, Victoria's chief financial officer, Richard Castellano, cornered her near the coffee machine. Richard was a man who had worked his way up through the ranks, and he had a particular way of looking at the world. Everything was a transaction, every relationship a negotiation. "So, who's the new girl?" he asked, his tone casual but his eyes calculating. "Her name is Maya. She's my new assistant," Victoria replied, keeping her voice professional. "She doesn't exactly fit the profile," Richard said, his gaze lingering on Maya through the glass walls of Victoria's office. "I mean, she's clearly not from our world. Where did you find her?" "Does it matter?" Victoria asked, feeling defensive. "It might," Richard said, lowering his voice. "People are talking. They're wondering why you suddenly hired someone with no corporate experience. Some are speculating that it's a charity case. Others are wondering if there's something else going on." Victoria felt her jaw tighten. "What are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything," Richard said smoothly. "I'm just saying that in this business, perception is everything. And right now, the perception is that you're acting erratically." After he left, Victoria sat at her desk, her mind churning. She knew Richard was right about one thing. People were talking. But she didn't care. Or at least, she was trying not to care. The old Victoria would have immediately corrected course, would have fired Maya to protect her image. But the new Victoria, the one that was emerging day by day, was determined to hold her ground. That evening, she and Maya stayed late at the office. They ordered takeout and sat in Victoria's corner office, looking out at the city lights spreading below them like a circuit board of human ambition. "People are talking," Victoria said, deciding to be honest with Maya. "About you, about us, about why I hired you." Maya set down her container of pad thai. "What are they saying?" "That it's a charity case, that I'm being erratic, that it's unprofessional." Maya was quiet for a long moment. "Do you want me to leave?" "No," Victoria said firmly. "But I need to know if you want to stay, because this isn't going to be easy. People are going to judge you. They're going to question your competence. They're going to make assumptions about who you are based on where you came from." Maya looked out at the city lights, her reflection ghostly in the window. "You know what I realized this week? I spent my whole life trying to be invisible because I thought that would keep me safe. But being invisible is its own kind of suffering. At least now, when people judge me, at least I'm being seen. That's better than nothing." Victoria reached over and squeezed Maya's hand. "You're braver than I am." "No," Maya said, turning to look at her. "You're braver. You're risking everything. Your reputation, your marriage, your entire life. I'm just trying to survive. You're trying to actually live." The conversation stayed with Victoria through the weekend. She found herself thinking about what Maya had said, about the difference between existing and living. She thought about her marriage, about Robert, about the hollow shell of a life they had constructed together. On Saturday morning, she sat across from Robert at the breakfast table. He was reading the financial section of the newspaper as he did every Saturday morning. It was a ritual, one of many that defined their life together. But rituals, Victoria was beginning to understand, weren't the same as connection. "Robert," she said, her voice steady, "we need to talk." He looked up from his newspaper, his expression mildly annoyed at the interruption. "About what?" "About us. About this marriage. About the fact that we haven't had a real conversation in 5 years. Robert set down his newspaper slowly. "Where's this coming from?" "It's coming from the fact that I'm tired of pretending," Victoria said. "I'm tired of going through the motions. I'm tired of being invisible in my own life." "You're not invisible," Robert said, but his voice lacked conviction. "You're one of the most successful women in the city." "That's not what I mean," Victoria said, frustration rising in her chest. "I mean invisible to you, to us. We don't see each other anymore, Robert. We're just two people sharing a penthouse." Robert was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was cold. "Is this about that assistant of yours, Maya?" "It's not about Maya," Victoria said, though she knew that wasn't entirely true. Maya had simply been the catalyst, the person who had shown her what was missing. "It's about me. It's about the fact that I don't know who I am anymore, and I'm tired of pretending I do." "So what are you saying?" Robert asked, his jaw tightening. "I'm saying I think we should consider separation," Victoria said, the words hanging in the air between them like a confession. Robert stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the marble floor. "You're having some kind of midlife crisis. You hire some woman from God knows where, and suddenly you want to blow up your entire life?" "That's not what this is," Victoria said, standing as well. "This has been coming for a long time. Maya just helped me see it." Of course she did, Robert said bitterly. I'm sure she had nothing to do with influencing your decisions. I'm sure it's just a coincidence that the moment she enters your life, you want to destroy everything we've built. We didn't build anything, Victoria said quietly. We just accumulated things. There's a difference. Robert stared at her for a long moment, and for the first time in years, she saw something in his eyes. Hurt. Real, genuine hurt. It made her pause. She hadn't meant to hurt him. She had just meant to be honest. I'll stay at the club for a while, he said finally. We can have our lawyers talk about the details. After he left, Victoria sat alone in the penthouse, surrounded by all the trappings of success. The marble countertops, the floor-to-ceiling windows, the art on the walls that she had never actually liked but had been told was a good investment. She felt lighter, as if she had set down a burden she had been carrying for so long that she had forgotten it was there. She called Maya. Hi, Maya answered, her voice warm. What's up? I told Robert I want a separation, Victoria said. There was a pause. How do you feel? Terrified, Victoria admitted, but also relieved. Like I can finally breathe. That's good, Maya said. That means you're doing the right thing. I hope so, Victoria said. I really hope so. The following week at the office was tense. Word had somehow gotten out about Victoria's separation, probably from Richard, who seemed to take pleasure in spreading gossip. Colleagues who had been friendly suddenly became distant. Emails that used to be warm became formal. It was as if the moment Victoria stepped out of line, the corporate world had collectively decided she was no longer one of them. But Maya remained steady. She would bring Victoria coffee in the mornings, sit with her during lunch, and remind her that she was doing the right thing. And slowly, Victoria began to understand that Maya wasn't just her assistant. She was becoming her friend, her anchor, the person who saw her not as a CEO or a statistic, but as a human being trying to find her way. One afternoon, as they sat in Victoria's office, Maya said something that would change everything. You know what I've been thinking? Maya said, her eyes bright with an idea. What if we didn't have to choose between success and authenticity? What if we could build something that was both? What do you mean? Victoria asked, intrigued. I mean, what if we used your platform, your resources, to do something that actually matters? What if instead of just climbing the ladder, we tried to pull other people up with us? Victoria leaned back in her chair, considering the idea. It was radical. It was impractical. It was exactly what she needed to hear. Tell me more, she said. And as Maya laid out her vision, a mentorship program for underprivileged women, a scholarship fund, a community outreach initiative. Victoria felt something shift inside her. This was what success could look like. Not just accumulation, but contribution. Not just climbing, but lifting others as you go. As Maya spoke, Victoria felt a surge of energy coursing through her. The idea was both daunting and exhilarating. They could create a nonprofit organization that focused on empowering women in the workplace, helping them navigate the challenges of their careers. They could offer workshops, networking opportunities, and scholarships for women who wanted to pursue business degrees. The possibilities were endless. What if we could create a program that allows women like you, who have faced obstacles, to mentor those who are just starting out? Maya suggested. Imagine the impact we could have. We could change lives. Victoria's heart raced at the thought. But how do we even start something like that? I have no experience in nonprofit work. You don't have to do it alone, Maya said confidently. We can research, reach out to other organizations, and build a team. We can find people who believe in our mission. They spent the next few days brainstorming, planning, and researching. Maya brought her own experiences to the table, recounting the struggles she faced while trying to find her way in a world that often felt stacked against her. Victoria shared her own journey, the sacrifices she made to reach her current position, and the loneliness that often accompanied it. As they collaborated, Victoria felt a sense of purpose that she hadn't experienced in years. The corporate rat race had left her feeling empty, but this new venture filled her with hope. The prospect of giving back, of creating something meaningful, sparked a fire within her. However, as they delved deeper into their plans, they faced challenges. Finding funding for their initiatives proved difficult. Victoria's corporate connections seemed less interested in supporting a nonprofit than in maintaining their bottom line. They spent long nights drafting proposals and reaching out to potential sponsors, but responses were often lukewarm. One evening, after a particularly frustrating day, Victoria slumped into her chair, her shoulders heavy with disappointment. Maybe this was a stupid idea. Maybe we're just two dreamers trying to change a world that doesn't want to be changed. Maya sat across from her, her expression calm. It's okay to feel overwhelmed. Change is hard and it takes time. Remember, we're building something from scratch. It won't happen overnight. But it feels like we're hitting a wall at every turn, Victoria said, running her hands through her hair. What if we never get the support we need? Then we keep pushing, Maya replied, her eyes fierce with determination. We're doing this because we believe in it. The right people will see our vision. We just have to keep going. Encouraged by Maya's resolve, Victoria took a deep breath. You're right. We can't give up now. We owe it to ourselves and to the women who need this. As the weeks turned into months, Victoria and Maya worked tirelessly to turn their vision into reality. They organized community events, partnered with local businesses, and reached out to women's organizations. Slowly, their hard work began to pay off. They secured small grants and donations, and their initiatives started gaining traction. One day, while preparing for an upcoming event, Maya received a call from a well-known businesswoman who had heard about their project. I want to help, she said. I believe in what you're doing, and I'd like to offer my support. That call was a turning point for Victoria and Maya. It opened doors to new opportunities and partnerships. With renewed energy, they began to expand their outreach, creating a network of women supporting women. But as their initiative gained momentum, Victoria found herself grappling with the fallout from her separation. The office tension continued to simmer, and Richard's judgment loomed over her like a dark cloud. He seemed determined to undermine her at every turn, making snide remarks during meetings and questioning her decisions in front of colleagues. One afternoon, during a strategy meeting, Richard challenged her ideas in front of the entire executive team. I just don't see how this project aligns with our corporate goals. It seems like a distraction, he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Victoria felt her heart race, the familiar anxieties creeping back in. This initiative is about building a better future for women in business, she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. It's not just a distraction. It's an investment in our company's future. A diverse workforce leads to better decision-making and innovation. Richard scoffed. Sure, but it won't pay the bills. We have shareholders to consider. The room fell silent, the tension palpable. Victoria could feel the eyes of her colleagues on her, waiting to see how she would respond. For a moment, she hesitated, but then she remembered Maya's words. You're trying to live. Investing in this initiative will not only benefit our community, but it will also enhance our brand reputation, Victoria said, her voice gaining strength. We need to be leaders in this space, not just followers. Richard crossed his arms, his expression unimpressed. We'll see about that. After the meeting, Victoria felt drained. She had stood her ground, but the battle was far from over. As she walked back to her office, she felt a mixture of anger and determination. She was tired of Richard's games, tired of feeling like she had to prove herself at every turn. Later that day, she confided in Maya. I can't believe how hostile Richard is being. It's like he's made it his mission to undermine me. Maya listened, her brows furrowing in concern. You can't let him get to you. You're doing something important. Focus on that. I know, but it just feels like every step forward is met with 2 steps back. Victoria said, frustration bubbling to the surface. What if he succeeds in making me look incompetent? Then we prove him wrong, Maya said firmly. We keep pushing forward, and we show him the impact we're making. You're not just a CEO. You're a leader who believes in something bigger than herself. That night, as Victoria prepared for bed, she replayed Maya's words in her mind. She was tired of living in the shadows of her past, and she refused to let Richard dictate her future. She was on a mission to make a difference, and nothing would stand in her way. The next day, Victoria decided to take a bold step. She called a meeting with the entire executive team, including Richard, to present the progress they had made with their initiative. She prepared a detailed report, showcasing the positive impact their program was having on the community and the potential benefits for the company. As she stood in front of her colleagues, she felt a surge of confidence. We are at a pivotal moment, she began, her voice steady. Our initiative is gaining traction, and the feedback from the women we're helping has been overwhelmingly positive. This is not just about philanthropy. It's about redefining what success looks like. Richard sat across the table, his expression unreadable. She could feel his scrutiny, but it fueled her determination. When we invest in our community, we invest in ourselves. A diverse workforce not only drives innovation, but also reflects the values we stand for as a company. Victoria's presentation was met with applause, and for the first time in weeks, she felt a wave of support from her colleagues. They were beginning to see the vision she and Maya had been working towards. Richard's face was a mask of irritation, but Victoria didn't care. She had made her point. After the meeting, several colleagues approached her, expressing their enthusiasm for the initiative. One of them, a senior vice president, even offered to help secure additional funding. Victoria felt a rush of gratitude. This was what she had been fighting for, a sense of camaraderie, a shared purpose. That evening, she met Maya for dinner to celebrate their progress. They sat at a cozy restaurant, the atmosphere warm and inviting. As they clinked their glasses together, Victoria felt a sense of hope blooming inside her. I think we did it, Victoria said, a smile spreading across her face. We're making headway. Maya beamed back at her. I knew you could do it. You just needed to believe in yourself. You helped me see that, Victoria replied, feeling a surge of appreciation for the woman who had become her ally and friend. As they enjoyed their meal, they discussed their plans for the future. They talked about expanding their outreach efforts, building partnerships with local businesses, and creating a mentorship program for women in high school. The more they talked, the more excited they became about the possibilities. But beneath the surface, Victoria couldn't shake the feeling that the battle with Richard was far from over. he would not let her succeed without a fight. She knew he would try to undermine her at every opportunity, just as he had done before. But now, she felt equipped to face him head-on. As the evening drew to a close, Victoria left the restaurant filled with renewed determination. She was no longer just a woman trapped in a corporate machine. She was a force for change. And with Maya by her side, she was ready to take on whatever challenges lay ahead. In the weeks that followed, Victoria and Maya continued to build their initiative. They hosted workshops, organized community events, and began to forge valuable partnerships with local organizations. The response from the community was overwhelmingly positive, and Victoria felt a sense of fulfillment that she had never experienced before. But as their success grew, so did the scrutiny from Richard. He began to question their financial decisions in meetings, undermining their efforts with subtle jabs and calculated remarks. Victoria felt the pressure mount, but she refused to back down. She had come too far to let anyone derail her vision. One afternoon, during a particularly tense board meeting, Richard presented a report that painted their initiative in a negative light. He highlighted the costs associated with the program and questioned its long-term viability. With the current financial forecast, I don't see how we can justify this expenditure, he said, his tone dripping with skepticism. Victoria felt her heart race as she listened to him speak. She could feel the eyes of the board on her, waiting for her response. But instead of feeling intimidated, she stood tall. This initiative isn't just about financials. It's about our values as a company. It's about investing in our community and creating a workforce that reflects the diversity. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Victoria's office, casting a warm glow on her desk. It was a new day, and with each passing moment, the anticipation of what lay ahead grew more palpable. Victoria had spent the last few weeks rallying support for her initiative, and today was the day they would officially launch their first mentorship program. Maya entered the office, her energy infectious as always. "Are you ready for today?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Victoria nodded, feeling a mix of nerves and exhilaration. "I think so. I've gone over my speech 100 times, but I still feel like I'm forgetting something important." "Just remember why you're doing this," Maya encouraged. "It's not just about the numbers, it's about the lives we're going to change. You've got this." As they made their way to the conference room, the atmosphere was electric. Colleagues had gathered, a mix of supporters and skeptics, all eager to see what the initiative would entail. Victoria felt a flutter of anxiety, but she pushed it aside, focusing on the faces of the women who would be impacted by their work. Once inside the room, Victoria took a deep breath and stepped to the front. The podium was adorned with the initiative's logo, a symbol of empowerment and hope. She scanned the audience, her gaze landing on Maya, who offered a reassuring smile. "Good morning, everyone," Victoria began, her voice steady. "Today marks a significant step forward for our company and our community. We're launching our mentorship program, designed to support women who are entering the workforce and need guidance to navigate the challenges ahead." As she spoke, she highlighted the program's goals: to provide mentorship, resources, and networking opportunities for young women. She shared stories of women who had struggled to find their footing in the corporate world, emphasizing the importance of community and support. "Together, we can create a ripple effect," Victoria said passionately. "We're not just changing individual lives, we're changing the landscape of our industry. With diversity comes innovation, and it's time we invest in that." The room erupted in applause, and Victoria felt a surge of adrenaline. She had poured her heart into this initiative, and it was finally coming to fruition. But as the applause faded, she noticed Richard's scowl in the back of the room. Though his expression was one of disapproval, it only fueled her determination. After the presentation, the audience broke into smaller groups to discuss the program further. Victoria and Maya moved from group to group, answering questions and sharing their vision. The enthusiasm was palpable, and Victoria could see that the tide was turning. As the event concluded, several colleagues approached Victoria, expressing their support and interest in getting involved. For the first time, she felt a sense of solidarity within the team. This was more than just a corporate initiative, it was a movement. However, amidst the celebration, Victoria remained aware of the challenges ahead. Richard was not one to back down easily, and she knew he would find ways to undermine their efforts. That evening, as she and Maya reviewed the day's success, Victoria's thoughts drifted back to Richard. "I can't shake the feeling that he's going to try to sabotage us," Victoria admitted, her brow furrowed with concern. Maya nodded. "He's threatened by what we're doing. But we can't let him distract us. We need to focus on building this program and proving its value." "Right," Victoria said, determination creeping back in. "We'll show him that this is more than just a trend. It's essential for the future of our company." As the weeks went by, the mentorship program began to flourish. They held workshops, created online resources, and matched mentors with mentees. The positive feedback poured in, and Victoria felt a renewed sense of purpose. She was no longer just a CEO. She was a leader in a movement that was changing lives. But Richard didn't remain silent for long. One afternoon, as Victoria was preparing for another mentorship workshop, she received a call from her assistant. "Victoria, Richard is requesting a meeting with you. He says it's urgent." Victoria sighed, bracing herself for the confrontation. "Of course it is. Set it up." When the meeting day arrived, Victoria entered Richard's office with a mixture of determination and apprehension. He sat behind his desk, his expression unreadable. "Thanks for meeting with me," he said coolly. "I wanted to discuss your little initiative." "Sure," Victoria replied, crossing her arms. "What's on your mind?" "While I appreciate your enthusiasm, I'm concerned about the financial implications of the mentorship program. It's great to have a passion project, but we're a business first and foremost," he said, his tone condescending. Victoria felt her blood boil, but kept her composure. "This program is an investment in our future. A diverse workforce will lead to greater innovation and profitability." Richard leaned back in his chair, a smug smile playing on his lips. "You really think that's enough to convince our shareholders? You're playing a dangerous game, Victoria. You might want to consider the repercussions." "I'm not going to let fear dictate my decisions," she shot back. "This is about more than just the bottom line." "Is it?" Richard challenged. "Or is it about your need to prove something? Because I can tell you, this isn't the way to do it." Victoria's heart raced. She knew he was trying to get under her skin, to rattle her confidence. "I won't back down, Richard. This program is making a difference, and I will fight for it." "Then you're going to need to prepare for a fight," he replied, his smile fading. "Because I won't let you jeopardize this company with your reckless decisions." Victoria left his office feeling a mix of anger and determination. Richard's threats only strengthened her resolve. She would not let him dictate her path. She would continue to champion the mentorship program and prove its worth. As she walked back to her office, she made a decision. She would gather data, testimonials, and success stories from the program to present to the executive team. They needed to see the tangible impact of their work, and she would ensure that Richard could not undermine their efforts. That evening, she and Maya worked late, compiling reports and gathering feedback from mentors and mentees. The stories they collected were powerful. Women who had gained confidence, landed jobs, and transformed their lives thanks to the program. Each testimonial reinforced Victoria's belief in the initiative and the importance of their work. The following week, Victoria organized a meeting with the executive team to present their findings. The atmosphere was tense as she entered the room, and she could feel Richard's eyes on her, filled with skepticism. But she stood tall, ready to defend her vision. "Thank you all for coming," Victoria began, her voice steady. "Today, I want to share the impact of our mentorship program and why it's critical for our company's future." She presented the data, the testimonials, and the stories of success. As she spoke, the room began to shift. Colleagues who had previously been skeptical leaned forward, engaged by the real-life transformations taking place. Victoria could see the change in their expressions, the dawning realization that they were part of something meaningful. But as she wrapped up her presentation, Richard interjected. "This is all very nice, but it doesn't address the financial concerns I raised earlier. How do we know this program is sustainable?" Victoria took a deep breath, prepared for his challenge. "We've already secured funding from several local businesses and organizations interested in partnering with us. Additionally, we're looking into grants that would support our mission. This is not just a short-term project. It's a long-term investment in our company and the community." Richard's expression darkened, but Victoria could see that the support from her colleagues was growing. They were beginning to see the value in her vision, and that was all that mattered. After the meeting, several colleagues approached Victoria, expressing their support and enthusiasm for the program. It felt like a turning point, a moment of solidarity that reinforced her belief in the initiative and its potential. As she walked back to her office, she felt a surge of hope. They were on the right path, and with Maya by her side, they would continue to push forward. Together, they would break down walls, challenge the status quo, and create lasting change. But the battle was far from over. Richard was still lurking in the shadows, and Victoria knew he would not give up easily. However, armed with the support of her colleagues and the success stories of the women they were helping, she felt more empowered than ever. The mentorship program was just the beginning. Victoria could see a future where their initiative not only uplifted women, but transformed the entire corporate landscape. It was time to break ground, not just for themselves, but for all the women who would come after them. With renewed determination, Victoria turned her focus back to the work ahead. She was ready to fight for what she believed in, ready to lead with purpose, and ready to embrace the challenges that lay ahead. The journey was just beginning, and she was prepared to make it count.